Today's episode is for you if you work with diverse ages of children at different levels. I am going to teach you today how to make it easy. I have my easy button today, and I'm going to show you how you can take one activity, how you can use it at the preschool level, and you can also use it at the upper elementary, middle school level. Let me give you a little bit of background. I'm always communicating with my SIS members. And that's so great because we're learning together. They have different back porches than I do. I work with children primarily that are ages 2 to 6 and of diverse abilities. They are very different from one another in a day, but I use the same activity with every single child that I work with. And that's because the activity is really educationally rich. The activity is, it treats the whole child. So I'm very proud of my SIS activities. They are what I call like a big pot of bone broth soup, and it has all the best herbs in it, and it has all organic vegetables. I mean, we're talking about organic vegetables in this economy. That's how good it is. So those are my SIS activities. And what I do with them is I'm able to simplify them. And I simplify them by having a sensory component for children who are at that sensory age. And I'm able to take them up for children that are at that cause effect age. And then I'm able to take them up further for children who are more at that symbolic play age. So we have different levels of play, but it's the same activity, and I'm able to slide up and down that parameter. And what it allows me to do is work fluidly with the child, in which we can take it a step up. The child's ready for it, or we can take it a step down if the child has a cold. I can always meet the child where they are. One thing we know about our clients with special needs is you can rely on them being consistently inconsistent. So it's really important to have these activities that you can do a lot with on many different levels, depending on where that child is on that moment in time. So let me give you an example at the preschool level. And today I'm going to share with you 10 tips on how you can take these activities that I do and use them with middle schoolers and use them at the upper elementary age. Let's start with what I do at the preschool level, and then I'm going to share with you what my SIS members do to use the activities and modify them with upper elementary and middle school kiddos. Thank you so much to SIS member Paige for sending me an email and asking me this great question. You gave us a podcast topic for tonight. Just a note about the podcast topics that I choose. It's not based on some algorithm. It's not based on what's the most popular thing trending on Google. It's based on what is on my mind, what is in my heart, what I'm seeing in the work I'm doing, what is happening in the work of the colleagues that I work with all over the world and my SIS membership. What feedback are they giving me? I kind of have like these eyes and ears on the ground from the SIS members that work at different grade levels. And I also have my own eyes and ears with my own hands in the dirt, or the coffee beans in my case from my sensory bin, and experiencing at my level. So it's to very many different levels. And then as a researcher, I also see things from a research level. Working on many different levels here. And then when I see something that's like, eureka, this is really important for me to share with you on a podcast. I found something here. I'm going to share it. I'm not going to be like, I got to keep this to myself, because our time here is short. Make the biggest impact as possible for children with special needs and for you. I appreciate you so much for being here with me, and your students are so fortunate to have you, that in your spare time, you're seeing, what more can I do? How can I be more of an agent of change? How can I change more lives? You know the power of people to make a difference. So I appreciate you so much. Let's talk about first the preschool level. So at the preschool level, if you look at one of my activities, for instance, on Instagram, on Mondays, I'll post it. Like this week it was on a Tuesday because it was so busy. I posted it. But I show you my activities, and you're going to see how the task-oriented movement activities, which treat the whole child, right? Executive function, really great stuff. Attention, we can go on and on about that. It treats every aspect of the child's developmental domain. But what I do with these activities is there's a sensory component. So you'll see like there's maybe coffee beans that the child's going to dig through to find their sticker with a word written on it. Or perhaps you're also going to see this cause and effect component in which they're like matching their sticker and they're going across the room and they're matching it to another sticker where it's matching and they like that and they get to stick it on. Or you're going to see perhaps I use a floor puzzle in which there's letters and numbers and I have a big word printed out at the bottom and they get to go over it and take that cause and effect component and put the letter in and come back and check it. So what you're seeing here is that I'm looking at this really educationally rich activity. It's a task-oriented movement activity that's bringing literacy to life, that's treating the whole child, that's improving their executive function. But more than that, it's going to be just right for every child I work with. So it's kind of like Goldilocks and the three bears. Well, this bed is too soft, this bed is too hard, this bed is just right. For each of my clients, when I develop these activities, I can take it to, okay, you're at the sensory phase. We're going to spend time here and I'm going to engage you here. And then we're going to like stick our foot out of the pond and we're going to try a little of this, over here in the cause effect phase. And then after that, we're going to try a little of this, and a little of the goal oriented play. And then we're going to try a little of this, and we're going to do a little bit of high level language here. And we're going to do a little bit of symbolic pretend play. I can easily go up and down that continuum on a moment to moment basis in which I'm setting the child up for success by meeting the child where they are. But at the same time, I'm challenging the child and scaffolding the child to grow at another level. So that's what's really beautiful about having an educationally rich, as I'd say, my activities are like bone broth soup when it's like entirely that's the broth and it's got the best herbs in the world in it and it has all organic vegetables. It's full of it. That's good. That's what it's like having it at your fingertips. This is going to be good for everyone that sits across from you. That's what I do at the preschool level. I'm able to provide an educationally rich activity to every single child that walks through that door with a diverse group of children who are ages 2 to 6 years old. For my instance, half of the children I work have complex communication needs, and many of them are at the sensory and cause effect level. And I embrace that. I say, come, 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 come. I've got you. I've got you hooked up here. And then I embrace that. I'm also able to move out of that really fluidly because the activity is all built in. It's in there at the right time in the right moment and not push the child onto a phase. Let's talk about Paige's question, who is my SIS member, and she's working with upper elementary and she's working with middle school kids. Now, even though I don't work with that ages, I do read a lot of research and I do know a lot of great strategies. And because of my SIS members who are middle school and are upper elementary as members that give me feedback, I know what to do. I can share with you right now 10 tips where you can take an activity and you can do some modification and then you can bring it to a higher level so that it's in there. And all you need to do is make a couple modifications so that it's going to be challenging for children at the upper elementary and at the middle school level. I still want you to be one and done. And why being one and done is so important is that you need to focus your efforts on being present with the child. That's where the magic is going to happen. If you can take all of that energy that you have and all of your resources, and you can focus on dynamically responding in interactions as you open and close circles and interact with the children, that's when the magic is going to happen. And that's only going to happen if you have the activity all set, prepped, and ready to go, and it's educationally rich and you can take it up and down. It's not going to happen if you're spending your time grabbing things off the shelf like a factory worker. I've been there, I've done that. You're going to be exhausted by the end of the day if you do that. So, here are the 10 strategies. Number one, have your children read the stories instead of you. So if you look at my SIS activities, I have Google Slides decks, and every week there's the elements of the stories, things like that. You're not going to read it. You're going to pass that baton onto the child. The child's going to take the role of teacher, and the child's going to read the story. Okay. And now with the child's reading the story, you can ask the questions. You can use the dialogic reading strategies that I covered in another podcast, for instance, and you can say, I wonder why this is the case. And you can connect it to their life. Has this ever happened to you before? And all of these great questions you can ask them as the student, and they're being the teacher and reading this. That's how things are going to change. These children can read, have them do all the reading, and you get to be the student and they get to be the teacher. Number two, another great strategy that you can do is you can take those elements of the story. So every week I'll have an elements of the story, which is kind of a social story, and it's written where we go through the elements such as what is the setting, the character, what is the problem, what is the action, what is the consequence. So we go through those elements of the story. You can say afterwards, can you make a story? This is a story about someone else. Can you make a story about yourself using the elements of the story on this topic? So with this theme that it's on, and then you can challenge this upper elementary child or this middle school child to create their own story, but you've given them some direction. You've given them a model, you've given them a theme, you've given them the elements so that it's not just a blank piece of paper. You're giving them those scaffolds so that they can go and write their own story. Number three, you can have the students create a play based on the elements of the story. You can take the story element that's included every week in a Google slide. It's a different story. And you can say, okay, now we're going to write a play. What would happen? And what would this character say? And what would that character say if this were to happen? And they can write lines of the play back and forth. Once again, what you're doing is you're having them take the lead. They're the teacher now, and you're this, and they're taking that story and they're bringing the literacy to life with their own gifts. The more you can pass that baton onto the child, in which the child's in charge of the learning experience, the more they can develop an internal locus of control. And that is everything. If you ask me what is the most important goal for any child that has communication impairments, I would say that they develop an internal locus of control, period. I don't need to know anything about the child. I can tell you that if they have that, they're going to have much better outcomes. So let's look at the next one. Number four, we can have the students create a story using an animal. A lot of my social stories are written about children. They're the main character. And what we can do instead is we can take that and say, let's make this be an animal. And where would this animal live? And what would this animal's problem be? And you can kind of use that symbolism with animals, and they can write their own story about an animal. If you're like me, the little red hen might be a good character that you relate to. All right, let's look at number five. You can have the students create a story and they can use that theme, but they can take it and use it and have their favorite character, their favorite animated character, their favorite movie star, their favorite sports character. And you can write a story about them with that theme. And that would be the lead character. Number six, you can have the students write the directions on how to complete the movement activity. So every week I do task-oriented movement activities, which are great for all children, preschool, school age. The research is in such great support of it. High school, it goes on and on, even through adulthood. Task-oriented movement therapy activities are highly effective. It's the best way you can help someone that has any sorts of motor delays or executive function delays. But you can have them write the directions on how they're going to play the game to complete the movement activities. So they're going to say, okay, first, da, 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 and they're going to write the how-to manual. Next, then, then, and I think that's really powerful because we don't give enough credence to non-imaginary how-to type of nonfiction writing. But the research indicates that's just as effective as fantasy writing. So if children are writing stories about how to complete a procedure, that's just as effective for their literacy skill development as if they're writing a story about ghosts and goblins and wizards, the fantasy stories. So this is good stuff. Let's look at number seven. We can take away the visual and we can give them auditory only cues, which is going to be quite challenging for children with developmental language disorder. It's really going to tax their verbal working memory and when you're completing the activities. So all of the SIS membership activities, the Google slides and the movement activities, it's very multimodal in nature. So that means you've got the printed word, you have the visual picture, you have the gestures. We're using all the senses. You have sounds, we have movement with the bodies, and we're doing everything, which is wonderful. for learning. But if we want to challenge at a higher level, we can remove all of that and just give auditory cues. So you can just turn that sticker over, whatever it is, and you can give clues, and the child's going to have to rely on their ears and strengthen that modality. Number 8, we can have the students give auditory only cues. So that's going to challenge them not only to auditorily process, but also to express themselves without visual cues in explaining what they have hidden in their hand, whatever is disclosed. The first way is simply you're giving the auditory cues and they simply have to use their ears. The second way, the child is giving to a peer, another child, what the clues are. And the peer has to listen to the other child or ask other questions to figure out what it is. So it's like 20 questions. Okay, is it a food? Is it something is soft? And they can ask questions back to find out what it is. All right, number 9, we can let the students create the obstacle courses for the task-oriented movement therapy activities. Now, I always say you don't need any materials whatsoever. Children can always just run to something, walk to something, skip to something, hop to something, bear crawl, however they're going to do a task-oriented movement activity. You don't need the expensive ganjas, the river rocks, the balance beams. I do have those things. We wrote a grant for them, and I feel really good for them because I know they're really expensive. And I do use them all the time, but you don't need them at all. You can still have as much fun. But you can give them those materials if you have it, and they can create the obstacle course. Or another thing is you can give them like blue painter's tape that easily comes off, and they can create an obstacle course with the blue painter's tape. And when they do that, you're really having them use their frontal lobe and imagination and describing the scene and what it is. These are river rocks, and they're going through the river, and this here is a bridge, and it's going through the forest, and they're using their imagination as they create the obstacle course. Number 10, this is the last one. We can have the students create the background story around the movement activities using the elements of the story. What is the reason behind the task-oriented movement therapy activity? So example, next week in the SIS membership, we are going to go on a Dracula hunt. You can look at Charlotte Diamond's song. It's really great. We're going to go on a Dracula hunt, but there's a background behind that. We can go like, okay, let's tell the story about this. Why are we trying to find Dracula? Why is Dracula lost? And then we're going to go back and reverse engineer that, and the students can write a story. First, who is the character? And then his name was Count Dracula. There is and then we can go, the setting. Okay, where did Dracula live? He lived in Transylvania? Okay, and we can go all through the whole thing. What was the problem? So we can go through all of the background and how Count Dracula got lost, which is why we're going on the Count Dracula hunt. Those are 10 ideas for how you can take an activity that you've treated the whole children with effectively at the preschool level. And I've told you how I do that with my children that I work with at the preschool level. And my children are anywhere developmentally 3 months old, if they were to test them, to children who are very advanced developmentally, who are like 10 years old. And I take that same activity, and all of them are challenged by that. All of them are supported in a multifaceted manner. You can take that same activity and you can pass the baton. And in a sense, you're giving that activity over to the child when you work with upper elementary and when you work with junior high. And you're saying, okay, now it's your turn to be the teacher, and it's your turn to bring this literacy and bring this play and bring this activity to life. You're in charge now, and I'm the student. That's really powerful stuff. What you have there is today's podcast. Thank you so much, Paige, my SIS member, for emailing me tonight. Because tonight I was like, what am I going to talk about today? And I was like, oh, I think I'm going to talk about this. And I'm like, oh, we talked about that before. And I was kind of just lost for inspiration. And then I opened my email and I was just like, oh, that's a great topic. Let's dive right in. So if you ever have any topics you want to discuss, shoot them my way. I always like good ideas, and good ideas are worth sharing. I'm rolling up my sleeves right now because I'm going to say, take all of this and make the world a better place, one child at a time. I promise with me, you will always be first.